Hey folks, Dustin here, and I got a different kind of video for you today because I can't get out on the course and throw right now because I injured myself. As you can see here, my right index finger is a little bit messed up right now. Essentially, I know people will wonder why. I was cleaning a chef's knife and it just slipped out of my other hand and just boom, right into the right index finger, almost all the way to the bone. Luckily, I didn't sever like any major tendons or anything, so I should get full mobility back, relatively quickly. But did have to get it stitched up because it was a very deep cut to make sure it would heal properly. And so basically, I've been kind of sidelined from doing any throwing or anything like that, as I can't really bend my finger right now without tearing out the stitches and causing some problems. So just having to kind of sit back and chill. And yeah, so that's kind of put me off of playing. So I figured now is, I guess, the best time to do some type of in the bag or disc I like to throw type video. Maybe people will be interested and curious about this. Maybe you won't. If this is not for you, come back next time. Hopefully I'll be playing again soon on the channel. But some people have at times been curious. Obviously I'm not a top level player. I'm not sponsored. I don't have anything cool like that. And so people may not be as interested in my stuff as a top player. But maybe for those of you beginners out there, or maybe just out of curiosity, you'll enjoy this thing. So that's what we're going to do because that's really all I can do, unfortunately, right now. So for my putting putters, it's the same as it's been for quite some time, and I have multiple of them in the bag, and that is going to be these Fierces. I carry 3 of them because just in case I need to warm up before a round or before a tournament or something, I can have multiples to putt with. I have them in like this kind of black and blue plastic. I think they look kind of neat. And I've been playing with these for a while. What I really like about them is that they're beadless, they're low profile. I like a shallower disc for putting. And I also like the fact that because of the understability of these putters and how much glide they have, I don't really have to change my putt too much between, say, putting from 25 feet away and putting from 40 feet away. A lot more stable putters, you'd have to kind of account for the fade a little bit more, and that would kind of make you adjust your aim, especially if you're also going to be doing any type of like jump putting or step putting. You have to kind of think about those things. And for me, I can get away without making any adjustments from a longer distance away when I'm using the Fears here. So been using those for quite some time. Don't foresee that changing unless I wind up somehow becoming an ambassador for some type of brand or something like that. So yep, that's still very much in the bag. Then for some throwing putters, I have several. We'll start with the more understable to straight ones. And I have 2. I have the 991 Fierce and a Opto X Pure. These fly pretty similar. Don't have like a crazy amount of turn to them in this plastic. Maybe this one does. If I really throw it hard, it'll get some right turn out of it. But with it being in this like ESP plastic, it kind of just flies dead straight. A pretty straight flyer. Obviously, when it gets windy, it's a little trickier, but in neutral conditions, this is a very nice straight flyer for me. Really like it. And the Pure is very similar. This one might have a little bit more finish to it because it's in the Opto X plastic, so it's a bit more stable, I guess you could say. And it has a little bit of a dye job I did on it. I don't know if you can really see it in this lighting, unfortunately. But yeah, I enjoy both these. They're pretty similar. I don't really have a crazy understable throwing putter in my bag. These are kind of as understable as it gets. Every now and then I might throw like a Moonshine Deputy or something that's a little more understable if I want like a big turnover shot, or I'll just throw one of my putting putters for something more understable if need be. But yeah, that's pretty much the main straight to understable throwing putters. Then for something a little more overstable, I have this dyed up Lucid X Warden that I like to throw. Because of the Lucid X plastic, it definitely has some good finish to it. Still flies pretty straight, but definitely has a little bit more fade at the end of its flight than some of the other discs that I throw. And so this does the job. Then if I want something a little more overstable, and in particular if I'm going to start doing some forehand approaches, some of my main discs are going to be these Zones, as well as the Suspect. So I've been kind of toying around with the Suspect instead of the Zones. So this, is definitely very overstable on the backhand. It even kind of maybe is more toward the mid-range category, but I really like it for lower profile flicks. But this is a little bit understable for a forehand disc. Like, it's definitely going to have a little bit of turn to it, a little bit of flip up. So I kind of do like hyzer flip up forehands with this. Not really carrying that in the bag, but that's just something that I've been kind of messing with. For what I have in the bag right now, I have this really beat up rubber blend Zone. And so this thing is lost most of its stability at this point, but it still can handle the forehand, but a little more understable. It's going to turn left a little bit for me on a forehand, but then it eventually straightens out and flies pretty dead straight for me. So really liking it for that. And on backhands, it's still got a little bit of overstability to it. So this is something I like to use for those more overstable backhands. And then I have this Crystal Flex zone that I dyed up a little bit. This is a little bit more stable than the beat up rubber blend one. This is my main flick approach disc. Maybe if I need like a really overstable backhand putter type shot, I might use this, but mostly just use it for the flicks. So yeah, just wanted to put that one out there. Then for something even more overstable, if I'm finding a headwind or something like that and I really want something more overstable, then I'm kind of torn between these two. I haven't really decided yet which one I'm going to keep in, but I have the Justice here, and then I also have this Anvil. And so both of these are fairly low profile, you know, disc. It's that the Justice has like a little bit of a bead on it and the Anvil doesn't. So that's kind of the main difference. The other difference is the Justice just has way less glide. I can't throw it as far as I can throw the Anvil, but sometimes that's a good thing, you know, for certain approaches and stuff like that. Whereas the Anvil, I can actually get it to fly a little bit further than I can the Justice. So kind of debating between these two. They're pretty similar. I've used the Justice for longer, but the Anvil without the bead feels a little bit better in my hand. So I'm kind of debating on which of the two that I'm going to wind up using, but these are definitely some really good overstable approach disc in my opinion, if you're looking for that sort of thing. And so now we get into the mid-ranges. For my most understable mid, I have this TI Soul. This is just a big turnover disc. I throw this thing flat, it's going to the right. Not like rapidly where it just cuts to the ground like a roller, but it's just going to go slowly to the right for pretty much the entire flight. It's never really going to come out. Definitely can't trust it in any wind. But I do like this, particularly in the woods or when I'm having to scramble on some type of like maybe patent pending backhand. This really comes in handy to just have like a nice super understable mid that I can control, particularly in woods, but you know, also just if I need some type of situation where I can't throw a forehand and I need something to go to the right, the Soul's going to do it for me. Another disc I've liked in this slot is the Tursus out of Westside. I think that's a pretty good one for this too. And I'm sure there's some other ones out there as well, depending on what brand you like to throw. The Origin may not be as understable, but it's one I've used kind of here before as well. And so definitely recommend this for people. Then for something slightly more stable, this is like more of my dead straight mid-range, maybe a little bit of turn to it, and that's going to be this Gold Line Claymore. I love the Claymore. I always have one Claymore in the bag at least, and this is just a beautiful one that used to be white that I dyed up and had like a double stamp on it. It just looks really cool. Love this because it's a dead straight flyer for me on a backhand pretty much, maybe a little bit of turn, and then I can also do some flip up forehands with it. You know, kind of like that beat up zone I have. I can do something similar with this. Just pop it softly on a hyzer on a forehand and have it just flip up and ride straight. So love the Claymore. One of my favorite mid-ranges of all time. And Gold Line plastic is probably one of my favorite plastics of all time, just the way it feels in the hand. Love it. Big fan. Then in this slot, I've rotated through a bunch of different discs. You know, this is also kind of more of a dead straight mid, but maybe like a little bit more of a left finish than the Claymore has. And right now, I'm enjoying the Thought Space Athletics Pathfinder. This is in the Ethos plastic. And, I mean, there's so many discs that you could put in this slot. Like, I've thrown a Compass in the past. I've thrown an EMAC Truth in the past. I've thrown the Buzz, obviously. The Hex is another good one from Axiom. So there's a lot of different discs that you can throw in this slot. But what I love about this one is, for some reason, I throw this Pathfinder further than any other mid I've ever thrown. I don't know why. I don't know if that's just like a weird coincidence. But for me, it's been flying further than any other mid that I throw. And I think the other thing I really like about it is, again, it's just a low profile. It's just not as deep to grab in your hand as compared to, say, a Compass or a Buzz or something like that. It's just like a little bit lower profile. So it just fits in my hand a little bit better. So if you're looking for like a lower profile mid that flies pretty straight, the Pathfinder's it, man. It's really good. Really, really enjoying it. And then finally, for a more overstable mid that isn't as crazy overstable as the Justice or something like that, I'm liking the Trust right now. The Trust, for me, has a lot of fade to it. It still flies pretty straight, don't get me wrong. If I really crank it hard, it's going to not fly too crazy overstable. But it definitely has, for me at least, in my arm speed, a little bit more fade, a little more finish than, say, a Buzz or the Pathfinder or, something like that. And so I've really been enjoying the truss. I can actually put this into a headwind and kind of trust it to not turn over too much. And yeah, I've really been liking this. So that's kind of it for mid-ranges. And now we get into some fairway drivers. First up, I have the Mall with a really, really cool stamp on it. This is my understable fairway driver. You know, I can either put this on some hyzer and trust it to fly pretty dead straight as long as I'm not thrown into a headwind or something, or I can rely on it kind of like the Soul to just throw it flat and just do this slow turn to the right. Really helpful in the woods, just really helpful for any type of backhand turnover shot I need to do. Yeah, I really love this disc. I can basically make it a dead straight flyer with a touch of hyzer, or like I said, if I need a slow turn, this is it. It feels just like an Explorer, but just flies more understable. And I kind of like that. I kind of like to find a mold I really like and then either just throw it in different plastics or different stages of wear, or just find another disc that's really similar, but just flies a little bit differently characteristic-wise. And like I said, this Mall is basically an Explorer, but just more understable. That's the way I view it. And since I've already mentioned the Explorer, you probably knew what was coming next, and that is indeed going to be the Explorer. I carry two of them in the bag. Both of them have kind of this Sake Bomb stamp on it. This one's like a really cool, the blue one's like a really cool spin die. So this one is a little bit more beat up. So this one pretty much flies dead straight for me with a little bit more finish, because the Mall has no finish. It basically just finishes flat or finishes a little bit turned to the right. This will actually kind of straighten out and fly straight, maybe a little bit of fade on the end of the flight. It's pretty beat up, though. It doesn't fade too much. So this is just like probably my most trustworthy fairway driver, because it's not as flaky in the wind as the Mall would be, but it doesn't have crazy finish either. I can do it for like flip up forehands if I need to, but mostly just throwing this on backhands. And I can throw this thing pretty far. I can throw this almost as far as some of my distance drivers. So this is a disc that I throw quite a lot, honestly. One of my most trustworthy discs in the bag. Really, really enjoy the Explorer. And then this one is just a more overstable version. Less wear, less beat up, flies more overstable. Still has a lot of fade to it at the end of its flight. So if I need something with more of a hard finish, this is going to be the one that gets it. Can also get some more ground action with this one. So yeah, really beautiful disc. Definitely like this for the more overstable fairway flights that I need on a backhand. Then for some 9-speeds, we got a lot of those in here. For the understable slot, I'm not sure what I'm going to bag yet. I've been kind of messing around with two different ones that I've been enjoying, and that is the Fury and the Hatchet. They're pretty similar. They just feel a little bit different. Like, this Fury is just way more domey, and so it doesn't like feel as flat in the hand as the Hatchet does. They're both very similar flights, very similar characteristics. I recommend both. The Furies, I think, are a little bit harder to get your hands on because they don't really sell them in North America very much, whereas the Hatchets are a little bit easier to get your hands on. So I'm kind of debating between these two. This will be for, again, just like big backhand turnovers, maybe a roller, something like that. I haven't been able to get my hands on one, but I really want to try the Mantra from Thought Space Athletics. I've heard some good things about that for like rollers and big turnovers, but I haven't been able to get my hands on one. I just don't like the Vandal. It's like the other one from Trilogy that is kind of similar to this. I've tried a couple of other fairway drivers out there, you know, like the Heat, Avenger SS, different things like that. I don't know. I just didn't really care for those too much, but these two have been pretty good. I'm just kind of deciding which one I really want to bag full time. Then it's time for Old Trusty. This is one of my other most trusty fairway drivers, just like that beat up Explorer from earlier, and that is a Gold Line Saint that I did like a little Fire Nation dye job type thing on. This thing is just money for me. It's pretty much dead straight flyer, has a little bit of right turn, but it doesn't stay turned. It kind of eventually straightens out. Doesn't really have any finish, like any fade at the end of the flight, but this is just so dead straight. Love it to just hit fairways, make sure I'm hitting my gaps. Love it in the woods in particular. Just a beautiful disc. I'm usually always carrying some type of Gold Line Saint in the bag. This one's a little bit more beat up, so it flies a little more understable than some of my other Gold Line Saints. So sometimes I'll bag two Saints, like this one, and then one that's a little more stable. But man, I just love it. I know some people think the Saint's a little too understable, but for me, it's a perfect hyzer flip disc, dead straight flyer, maybe a little bit of right-hand turn. Can't really trust it in headwinds, but in the woods or in, you know, normal conditions, this thing, I trust this, you know, more than almost any other disc in my bag besides maybe that Explorer. If I need to get distance, but I don't want to throw a distance driver, this is probably the one I'm going to throw. I can get it pretty much just as far as a distance driver. So yeah, really, really love this disc. And then for something that has flown very similar to that, but has maybe just a little bit more stability for some reason, is this Insanity. And I think it's because it's in the Proton plastic, which is a little bit more of an overstable plastic. When I've thrown Insanities in, let's say, plasma plastic or something, they've been, you know, really flippy. But for some reason, these Proton Insanities aren't too bad. Like, they fly pretty dead straight. They even have a little bit of left finish at first. So I've kind of been enjoying this. I don't know if this will stay in. Maybe just another gold line Saint that's more stable, or an Opto Saint that's a little more stable than the one I just showed you might kind of kick this one out. But I don't know, man. I really dig the Insanity. And I think in the Proton Plastic, it's not too crazy understable. It's very workable. And so there you go. And then to finish out the 9-speeds, we just have a bunch of Felons. So the first Felon I have is really beat up Lucid Felon. This is understable on a forehand for me now. Just kind of a dead straight flyer on a forehand. So that's what I use it mostly for. Then I have this one. This is the Kona Panis one that came out when she got signed, like her Dimax stamp. This is in the Fusion plastic. So eventually it will beat in to be, you know, a more understable Felon for me. But for right now, I haven't had it for very long. Haven't thrown it very much. So it's still, you know, fairly new, and so therefore still flies pretty overstable. But I imagine in time this will get beat in, and I'll cycle in like another Lucid Felon, and maybe this will knock the other beat-up Felon out the bag or something. But really enjoyed that. And then for something much more overstable from a Felon, I have this 2019 Tour Series Lucid X from Eric Oakley. I usually always carry one Lucid X Felon in the bag just to have something really overstable for like flex shots or to fight headwinds with the forehand, or if I want to throw some kind of like big skip shot. This is what's usually going to do it for me. This is just the one I happen to have in the bag right now. I lost the ice blue one I used to have, and so this is the one that I have right now. But yeah, Felons do it for me for the overstable slot. And then this one's kind of a tweener, like a hybrid disc. This is the Sergeant. This is just the one I'm bagging right now. This, for me, on a forehand, it just flies a little less overstable than the Felon. It's more straight. On a forehand, I can get a little bit more distance out of it, have a little bit more control over it. Really like this for flip-up forehands to just push nearly as far as a distance driver. I can also throw this on backhands if I need like something really overstable on a backhand. The Sergeant does it for me as well. So, yeah, really enjoy the Sergeant as kind of like that hybrid slot between fairways and distance drivers. And now we get into the distance drivers, and we'll start out with this weirdly dyed, drawn-on Airbender Proto Hades. This thing is mega understable. I usually only pull this thing out if I'm going for like max distance and there's no wind, and I can like pop it on hyzer, have it flip up to flat, ride to the right, then eventually straighten out. Or if I'm throwing into a tailwind or I need some type of big turnover, this is the one that's going to do it for me. Super understable. So don't use it too much because it's not that trustworthy. But like I said, if it's no wind at all, or there's a tailwind, or I need a big turnover, this is the disc I go for. It's probably the thing I can throw the furthest if there's no wind that bothers it. Definitely enjoy the Hades. Then for a step up in stability, it's kind of a tie right now, so I'm not sure which one I'm going to keep in the bag because they're both so similar. But I have this Big Z Thrasher, and then I have a stock stamp Hades, the newer run of Hades. And they're not as understable as the Protos or the first runs. They're got a little bit more stability to them than the older Hades. Still understable, but a little bit more controllable. Can trust it a little bit more. But the Big Z Thrasher is similar. I think the Big Z Thrasher is a little more stable than the Hades, and that's kind of why I like it. But it's kind of a toss-up right now between those two for like the quote-unquote understable distance driver that's not crazy understable like my Proto Hades. All right, and then for my main distance drivers, I pretty much carry two molds, and I have them just kind of in different plastics or different stages of wear as far as what I'll throw. And so the first is going to be the Sword from Westside Disc. So this is a beat-up VIP sword that I've had forever. So it flies almost as understable at this point as a Thrasher or a Hades, so a little bit of overlap in that regard. This is a newer tournament plastic one that I dyed up that looks really nice. So this is a little bit more stable. This is pretty neutral, I would say, fairly neutral. Definitely can get some flip up on it, a little bit of turn out of it, but I would say it's a pretty dead straight flyer, pretty much as straight as a distance driver is going to get. So I really, really like this. This is probably my main driver, I would say. And then this is a Tournament X plastic one that just has like the hatchet stamp on it, but this is a Sword Tournament X plastic that I dyed up. Used to be white. This Tournament X plastic is much stiffer and much more overstable, so this thing actually has some pretty good fade to it. I consider this more of a slightly overstable distance driver for me on backhands. This can actually kind of handle a headwind a little bit. It's going to get a little turn into a headwind, but it's going to be able to fight back to straight at the very least, and if there's no wind, then this is going to fly pretty overstable for me on a backhand. This is probably like my main backhand overstable driver if I need something with some good finish to the left. And then this is more of if I need something pretty straight, maybe slight left finish, this will get the job. And if it's not too windy, this is like one of my go-to distance drivers. I trust this almost as much as a Fairway as far as accuracy and hitting lines. You can get some really good distance out of this as well, as long as it's not too crazy windy. So yeah, the swords definitely take up a pretty big slot in the bag for me. But I also love the trespass. So similar to the sword, very slight difference. Like this hybrid one that I have that was Tina Oakley's. This is like a cool double stamp. This is old trusty for me. I've had it for a very long time. Flies really, really straight with some slight left finish. Doesn't really handle headwinds well anymore because it's just beat up enough, but this definitely has some overlap with a couple of the swords in my bag, but I kind of like that because if I'm out practicing, then I can kind of throw multiple shots and kind of get a feel for things. So it's not always bad to have some overlap, but yeah, I just can't take it out the bag. You know, I could probably just throw the swords and never have to throw this, but for some reason, this just kind of holds some sentimental value, I guess you could say, and so I always kind of keep it in the bag just because of how much I like it. And then this is a moonshine trespass, and so this is actually slightly overstable, not as overstable as the Tournament X sword, but definitely still has some stability to it. And so if I need something with a little bit of finish, but I don't want the hard finish the Tournament X sword, then this is usually one that gets the call. Actually can hold up to a headwind a little bit. It's still going to get turn out of it, but it can kind of straighten out a little bit. But normally I use this for neutral conditions. If I'm throwing it to a headwind, I usually use that Tournament X sword. But yeah, there's that. And I should say that those are all pretty much backhands for me. I don't really flick any of those. If I do want to throw forehands, I have 3 molds that I throw forehands for. And so first up is the Raiders. I have this beat up hybrid Raider and then this Lucid Chameleon Raider. And so these are more of my straight to understable forehand disc. I can kind of throw them on some slight highs around a forehand, have them roll over just a little bit to the left and eventually flatten out and straighten out and still have a little bit of finish. So these are kind of my main forehand disc, are these 2 Raiders, except for windy conditions. I don't really trust them too much in the wind, just because they're a little bit beat up now, so they don't really handle headwinds well, for example. But these are basically my main forehand disc, are these Raiders, particularly this pink one. This one usually only gets brought out in tailwinds, or if I have a lot of open space and I can afford to have it roll over on me more than I'm hoping. So yeah, that's that. Then for my other workhorse forehand disc, it's going to be the Royal Rive. This just has more stability to it than a Raider. Can handle headwinds a bit better than the Raider can. Doesn't really have too much turn, just kind of flies dead straight and then has some finish. I really love this for forehands. Feels a little bit lower profile like the Raider for me, so it feels comfortable in the hand for forehands. I might use this on a backhand if I need something really overstable and like the swords aren't going to cut it, or like the Moonshine Trespass isn't going to cut it, and then maybe I would go to this if I really needed it. But mostly going to be for forehands for me. And then finally, the last disc in my bag, this is pretty much a utility disc. Don't really throw this too much unless it's super windy, or I just really need to make sure that a forehand's going to go hard to the right. And that is going to be this new adder. This is a super just domey as all get out one that I got. Super overstable for me. Don't really have much use for it other than crazy flex forehands, fighting a headwind with a forehand, and just making sure I stay out of trouble, or as kind of more of a utility disc for like hard skips and stuff like that. Doesn't get thrown too much, but when I need it, I'm glad it's there, basically, is how it goes. And so, yeah, that's going to do it. That's pretty much everything that I have in my bag. If you're curious what bag I have and stuff, I mean, I pretty much just use a bag inside of a Zuka cart. I use a cart because I don't want to mess up my back and I'm getting older. And so it's nice, especially if I'm playing multiple rounds, you know, then it kind of stops me from having to take the bag on and off and, you know, the extra work that requires on the body. And so yeah, I just use a cart with a bag inside of it. Hope you all enjoyed this. Again, I know it's a little different, and I know that I'm not a top player, so maybe what's in my bag isn't as important to you as what a top player has in their bag when you're looking for suggestions. But I figured I would just do this because I couldn't really do anything else right now with the injury, and maybe people were curious what I throw. And so that's kind of the main staples right now. I'll let you know if something changes later on, if I wind up partnering with somebody, or if I just find some other stuff I really like. Maybe I'll even do some reviews on some disc if that's something you folks would be into. Let me know in the comments below. But yeah, just follow, subscribe, and catch you in the future here soon, hopefully, with some more content. Yeah, thanks.